Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the preemptive failure of the Inflation Reduction Act, which really will create more inflation, and you see one of the end results of that here. Link in the description, archived of course. Now the insinuation here is actually something that would normally come from the left. This is the Daily Wire, so I think these are Shapiro's people talking about the cost of electric vehicles. Of course, the deduction that you can take on your taxes if you purchase an electric vehicle has been upped by thousands of dollars actually by this bill. Again, it's a windfall for the upper middle class and above, especially in urban areas. It's good for, therefore, the lower level donor base from Blue State America for Joe Biden. It's basically a kickback to his fans, his remaining fans, who are very comfortable economically, so they don't really care. They also don't need a rebate if they're buying a vehicle that costs this much. I wanted to take you, though, through one part of this article. There's a different reason other than the corporations are passing the cost on to the consumer because they can now do so due to the rebate aspect to this actually has to do with inflation. Citing significant material cost increases and other factors, that is important, Ford's announcement revealed price hikes between $6,000 and $8,500 for its electric vehicles. The F-150 Lightning Pro, for example, will sell for $46,974, a $7,000 increase from the $39,947 charged for last year's model. GM likewise increased the cost of its electric Hummer by $6,250 last month. The price hikes are comparable to the $7,500 tax credits for new electric vehicles included in the $740 billion Inflation Reduction Act, which really most of it has to do with, expanding the IRS to go after them tax cheats. In other words, to sue random people for being dissidents. You only have to go after a few tens of thousands of them and you've swamped all of the independent content creators on the internet and knocked them out of the way, which is exactly what Biden and his ilk plan to do. When I look at these, though, I look at their statement, number one, but number two, just the plain facts. If you did not raise the cost of your vehicles by a significant margin, maybe not by $6,000, $7,000, but by a fairly significant margin, you'd actually be losing money year over year because the dollar's purchasing power has been crippled by inflation. Some people are complaining that this is an example of evil, out-of-control corporations. They don't care about the environment. Well, yeah, because they're making EVs that cause more pollution than regular gas-powered cars, and it's basically NIMBYism. They don't care about the environment or the consumers. They're price gouging. Firstly, if they're going to gouge anyone, buying electric vehicles in the United States starts with the upper middle class. You're not going to find anyone in small-town America with an electric vehicle anyway. You're going to find urban, NIMBY, upper middle classers that live in gated communities or live in nice apartments or people living in penthouses and shit like that that buy an electric vehicle for show, show it to their friends and say, well, look, I'm doing my part from their 13-room McMansion. I'm doing my part. Look at this and how wonderful I am. Ha ha ha. And they're spraying chemicals all over their monocultured lawn and, they're still eating filet mignon. They're telling you to eat bugs, though. They're the only ones that are affected. But this is inflation. This has nothing to do with the corporation saying, well, consumers will get $7,500, so we'll raise our price accordingly. There is, however, an industry in which that is what's happening, and has happened for many decades, by the way. Education, specifically colleges, public colleges. Every time the federal government hands them money, they raise their tuition accordingly. They raise the cost of everything else accordingly. There's no attempt by any higher educational institutes of note to focus on STEM and simply say, well, this will mean we can get even better students in because we might have this A++ student with a 4.5 fucking GPA and 5 extracurriculars and he's just a really swell kid, but he's from a really poor family, and now we can give him more aid because we think he's really going to succeed, and we want his name associated with our college. We're effectively bankrolling him, expecting him to be famous and rich someday, and then we can bother him for kickbacks. We can ask, please, for your alma mater, would you spare a donation of just a few $1 million, Mr. Musk? Stuff like that happens constantly. They even try to shake down the poor college kids that have barely graduated and are still shoveling their way out of debt. I was a student alumni caller once. I know this personally. But Biden has been snookered, and it was predictable. If you have near double-digit inflation, and that's just the core inflation numbers, the real inflation numbers are higher. Vehicle costs have been soaring significantly, along with housing and food and a few other things really increasing. Why wouldn't they increase their cost? Yeah, maybe disproportionate to the actual inflation. They want to make money. They're raising their cost, assuming that they will hit equilibrium. The demand will remain roughly the same. They are, I'm sure, betting on part of that being rebate-based, and then they're offering a product for NIMBYs to buy, for urban and suburban liberals to buy. It's not being offered to anyone else because there's no charging station. I see no problem with this, by the way. They can do whatever they want as far as cost. I keep hearing it's a private company. They can do whatever they want. Then all of a sudden, if you bring up the environment in any way, shape, or form, everyone folds and says, oh my God, but not on that because we're going to all die by 2030 if we don't completely reduce greenhouse emissions to zero. Quick, we need to bulldoze more farms to make room for more commie block apartments. That makes a lot of sense too. You'll notice that the things that they're doing are bullshit. But he has been snookered. And I suspect that that'll be the case with more businesses. As the government attempts to subsidize things, typically it ends up having the opposite effect, especially when it's this big a bill, and most of it doesn't even involve, by the way, subsidies for EVs and stuff, because you're pumping more funny money into the economy, which is already overheated according to the Fed. They keep trying to blame that. Well, there's just too much demand. That's why there's inflation and all these problems. Productivity is plummeting right now, to be clear, to a point that's not been seen since the height of the Great Recession. Just so that we're aware, productivity is now collapsing in the United States economy. That's going to begin showing up over the next few months. Honestly, I don't even know why Manchin decided to go ahead with the Inflation Reduction Act except to parrot about it constantly and pretend it's not basically the IRS expansion bill, which is a huge proportion of the actual cost there. It's many billions of dollars. I'm looking at this, though, and it's a little bit of schadenfreude, I suppose, because Biden ought to have understood that this would happen. Even without the EV bill, even without that proportion for the subsidies, they still would have raised their costs significantly because of the inflation. And then he could claim price gouging, but now people say that it has to do with the EV subsidies. At the very least, some people will wake up to the problem of government subsidies. So I guess there's a silver lining after all. That's about all. Peace out.